Good afternoon. It's good to see everyone here today. We're getting that. Oh, there it goes. Blues. You don't do blues at all. Do you? He liked blues, though, didn't he? I have a couple of different announcements for you, just so you know. First of all, I have to apologize because I did a horrible thing that Henry would have loved. Would have hated. I put the blinds down so you can't see the mountains. I am so sorry for that. Please forgive me. But if I don't do that, the people at home will not be able to see. Last I saw, there were about 12 people or 12 different people that are watching from home. So to those of you that are home, at the end of the service, don't go away because I'm going to take you in the back room and we're going to record all of your thoughts so that Pam will have those. And so just hang with me at the end of the service. For the rest of you, your job, you might have noticed there's food back there. That's only so that you sit and talk to each other, so that you take time to share stories. Because today we're celebrating Henry, and there were lots of stories about him and who he was. And I know all of you would much rather be out exploring those mountains, but you get to explore each other in here, and you get to tell those stories, and you get to laugh and cry together. And we come to a place like this not because we want to. How many would rather be out there? How many would rather talking to him in person? We come to this place because of how he lived, because of what he did, how he touched us, how he moved in us, how he changed us because of his actions. We come today to celebrate an amazing person, Henri Bisson. And we get to be able to laugh with him and cry with him and celebrate with him. We celebrate how he lived. We celebrate how he loved. We celebrate Henri today. Will you pray with me? I'm going to pray the prayer that's right here in your bulletin if you want to watch Great Spirit, give us hearts to understand, never to take from creation's beauty more than we give, never to destroy wantonly for the furtherance of greed, never to deny to give our hands for the building of earth's beauty, never to take from her what we cannot use. Give us hearts to understand that to destroy earth's music is to create confusion, that to wreck her appearance is to blind us to beauty, that to callously pollute her fragrance is to make a house of stench, that as we care for her, she will care for us. Amen. We have a number of people that knew Henri much better than what I do. I got to see Henri on a fairly regular basis because he was good at accompanying Pam to do the things that she needed to do. But I really need to hear from you, to be able to hear your stories. And so we're going to go along in the order that's in your bulletin. So Dean Bibles, you're up first.
Thank you, Jim. After that prayer, it kind of sums up Henry very well. I just want to thank everyone that came today to celebrate the life of Henri Bisson. I'm honored to be able to share this time with his family and in remembering his life and his spirit. His time on this planet made a tremendous difference in many ways that matter to all of us. We knew him as a man of life, full of life, with vigor and passion. As I look at Pam and Julie and Rakeem and Jeremy, Carrie, Oliver, and think of Nicole, who couldn't be with us today, I see those who really gave a smile to Henry's face, for sure. And can't help but keep in mind that those who are here or could not be here also are here in further recognition and admiration of Henry. Henry was a force whose momentum carried those around him, even some of those who didn't think they wanted to go his way, but they did. He carried them. And in Arizona, when the opportunity arose for BLM to acquire the Empire Ranch, it was shortly after Henry became district manager in the Phoenix district. He quickly accepted the challenge, marshaled a team, and made it happen. This was a complex process that involved the very kind of vision Henry possessed. The property being acquired by exchange would not be under his jurisdiction, but the property being used for exchange was. But Henry was for the better good for everybody, and he just pushed that on through. Not only that, but he didn't just acquire the empire. He got the Rose Tree, and he also brought the Googler Fry Ranch up on north rim of the Grand Canyon, way west of the Grand Canyon, which gave access to the Colorado River up there. He brought his dedication to overall good and did the same with respect to other agencies as well. While he firmly supported the organization he worked for, he energetically assisted in the mission of other agencies where it was practical. Henry was a true public servant with a pure heart of gold. After passage in 1988 of the Santa Rita Exchange Act, he quickly took the field lead in accomplishing acquisition and federal management of a vast amount of land to complete the Buenos Aires National Wildlife Refuge, Catalina State Park right out here, and the land that's now Agua Fria National Monument, plus a multitude of other transactions. Well, what he accomplished here in Arizona would amount to a life well lived. It was only a fraction of what he achieved in his work career. He was as upbeat about fishing for Alaskan halibut and hunting elk as the way he went about his work, full of energy and enthusiasm. Henry was as thrilled about other successes, whether fishing or on-job accomplishment, as he was his own. Jeremy can tell you about his calls with his dad after he caught a fish, that Henry was just as excited about that big fish as Jeremy was. In the vast plains of northern Alaska, Henry directed the planning effort for the 23 million acre National Petroleum Reserve, Alaska, that was entrusted to BLM's management. It was a high interest, high resource value area. His action set the stage for protecting some of the most critical and important wildlife and waterfowl nesting areas around Lake Tehachapook. They were very important to all of us. Well, he kept going, accepting the challenge, the larger challenge, not only making sense of the land ownership patterns in Arizona, but he impacted many other areas of our nation as a whole, where Henry succeeded. I think, to put it mildly, he succeeded. As we look around the nation today, we enjoy the benefits of considerable efforts Henry brought to the mission. Most importantly, that future generations will enjoy. See, Henry answered the call to live according to a higher purpose, with understanding that public lands are entrusted to us for a short time, and we owe a deep responsibility to future generations. His personal priorities were in line with everything else he did. He and Pam traveled extensively, whether a photo safari to Africa, riding the historic Orient Express, exploring Costa Rica, and so many other journeys. As a dedicated spinning rod fisherman, he even accepted the challenge of fly fishing. That's what, as I contemplate those here today and the many, many people who Henri cared about, deeply about, it's easy to think about all those for whom he made a real difference. We must realize, however, that those who will benefit most from his work have not even been born yet. If our lives are a message to the world, and Henri's message will continue to speak for generations to come, he exemplified the concept that we should live so that future generations will look at us with gratitude for the way we treated others and our natural resources. We look with deep gratitude for Henri Bisson having been here and for the life he lived. I want to mention the Public Lands Foundation that recognized an award to Henri, the Henri Bisson Service Award. The award is granted to Public Lands Foundation members, partners, or donors who, like Henri Bisson, give unselfishly to further the objectives of PLF and provide exemplary service to the organization. This will be granted not every year, but as someone that has that kind of unselfish donation. John Fend, one of Henri's longtime fishing buddies, who's here today, quoted a fisherman's prayer as a memory of Henri. In that vein, I must note that the Alaska fishing gang, they're all here, sitting back here together in honor of Henri. But I would give that, God grant that I may live to fish until my dying day. And when it comes to my last cast, I then most humbly pray, when in Lord's safe landing net I'm peacefully asleep, that in his mercy I be judged as good enough to keep. Henri, most certainly a keeper. May he rest in peace. Pam, Julie, Jeremy, Oliver, we grieve with you and love you very much. Thank you.
Dan Kimball represents the Sonoran Institute. Will you come speak with us?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Kimball, and I serve as I'm on the board of directors of the Sonoran Institute. Today, I'm honored to represent the Sonoran Institute and offer some thoughts and remembrances about our dear friend and colleague, Henri Bisson. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Sonoran Institute, or SI as we call it, SI is a conservation organization that's been around over 30 years. SI focuses on the West, particularly on water, using a collaborative, trusted convener approach to address challenging natural resource issues facing the West. SI has its headquarters here in Tucson with a staff of 60 located in Arizona, Colorado, and in Mexico as well. Many SI board members and staff are here today, and I trust many are tuning in via the internet as well. Henri joined the Sonoran Institute's board of directors in 2011 and served on the board until 2019. As clearly stated in his personally written SI director bio, Henri's passion was, quote, making things happen, unquote. And man, did he do that for the Sonoran Institute. Henri also served as the chairman of the board and as SI's acting chief operating officer for 2 years, guiding the organization during a particularly perilous time of transition. I wasn't on the board then, but my understanding is that Henri, in large part, saved the organization. The Sonoran Institute owes a lot to Henri Bisson. When Henri served on SI's board of directors, the organization took tremendous steps forward in advancing the Colorado River Delta Restoration Program in Mexico, and in its Santa Cruz River Restoration Program as well, from the international border just north of here in Marana, Arizona. SI also launched its Growing Water Smart program in Colorado. Henri stepped away from the board in 2019 to focus on other causes that were important to him. As a fellow University of Arizona graduate, I know firsthand that Henri loved the University of Arizona. Go Wildcats. Henri cared deeply about the institution and its students, serving as a guest lecturer many times and providing personal financial support to U of A's School of Natural Resources and the Environment, and by supporting specific programs of the school as well. For example, Henri was an avid supporter of GALS, GALS, Girls on Outdoor Adventures for Leadership and Science, which is a free program for high school girls led by U of A's cooperative extension staff that integrates outdoor education with place-based science learning, getting young women on the science path and getting the next generation exposed to the ecology of the Sonoran Desert and important natural resource issues. GALS was exactly the kind of program that Henri loved to support. Henri continued to remain active on SI's advisory council following his departure from the board. Always the idea guy, the smartest guy on the room on land policy, encouraging SI to be more engaged in landscape issues facing the West, like the Colorado River drought situation and the challenges facing the Salton Sea in California. Henri was always encouraging, always pushing to make things happen. This was what Henri Bisson was known for. He was legend in the Department of the Interior during his 34-year career with the Bureau of Land Management. He was the model civil servant, providing reliable, smart, and valued advice and counsel to multiple administrations. My wife, Kit, who's here this afternoon, worked in the department in the early 2000s and can personally vouch for that. She adored Henri. Henri was the go-to guy, the straight shooter they could depend on for the best advice. And since he knew both the natural ecosystem and the institutional ecosystem, he knew how to get things done. And he carried that amazing skill set onto his tenure with SI upon retirement from the federal government and his relocation here to Tucson. Henri was also a people person. He could talk to anyone, and I know firsthand that he made new board members and staff feel welcome at SI. He was an inclusive leader, a mentor, a sage counsel, and I guess I would say an incredible force for good. And he had a great sense of humor too. Of course, it was always nice when Henri would announce that he had been successful at the poker table and that he was in a position to donate his winnings, which were sometimes, how should I say, sizable. There was only one Henri Bisson. Henri's legacy will live on. Today, on behalf of the Sonoran Institute's Board of Directors, CEO, and staff, I'd like to announce the establishment of a new annual award within the Sonoran Institute, the Henri Bisson Excellence Award, an award that will be granted annually to an SI board or staff member who has gone above and beyond, who has exhibited the passion, professionalism, and make it happen drive that Henri Bisson brought to the Sonoran Institute. Pam and the entire Bisson family, the Sonoran Institute would like to send along our deepest condolences and special thanks for all that Henri did for the Sonoran Institute. We will all miss him very, very much. We pledge that Henri's work ethic and spirit will live on in everything that the Sonoran Institute does for the West, its natural resources, and its people. Godspeed, Henri Bisson.
Whew. You guys, thank you for sharing all of that. Henri, thank you for making us all feel guilty because we don't do as much. That's a lot of stuff. I don't know how we had time for the rest of the speakers that are going to talk today, because they're going to talk about this whole other side of Henri, that in the face of all that, he still was able to have a family and love that family and do well with that family. And so we are going to start with Ron to come tell us some about what that side was.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Most of you can probably guess how I'm related to Henri. I've read over really all the wonderful tributes and memories that's been shared about Henry. I was particularly struck by the previous speakers, but also the memories that John Fenn shared, the tribute that the Sonoran Institute put on their Facebook page, and the news release the Public Land Foundation put out. But all of you really captured Henry well. He was everything you said and written about. Now, I can't speak with any authority about Henry as an adult, husband, father, friend, or coworker. I think you all express that better than I can. What I can do is share a little bit of his life growing up and some of the things that shaped him. And hopefully you find that a little interesting, okay? Now, about 15 years ago, when Henry was in Washington, I was passing through and he and I went out to dinner. It was Italian, of course, because that's what Henry liked. It was his favorite restaurant, I think, too. We had a little wine and we started reminiscing about growing up in Somersworth, New Hampshire. I made the comment that we were poor. Henry replied, we were, but we didn't really know it because everybody else was in the same predicament or the same situation. Now, we had a large extended family, grandparents, lots of aunts and uncles, about 35 first cousins and lots of second cousins. Dad was an electrician at the University of New Hampshire and mom stayed home. Our heritage was French Canadian, and Henry actually spoke French before he spoke English. He was raised Catholic, Sunday Mass, no meats on Friday, going to confession, receiving communion were all expected. Henry attended St. Martin Academy through 8th grade. Now, what was interesting about that, in my mind, was that we were taught half a day in French and half a day in English. Henry was a great student, much to the angst that my sister Elaine and I felt. His report cards were always A's, ours not so much. Henry was the eldest and thus the first to experience what every child goes through growing up. He did it willingly and bravely. Henry started showing an interest in everything outdoors very early on. And I really attribute it to watching Davy Crockett and Howdy Doody on TV. If we lost track of Henry in a store, we always went to the sporting goods area, where he would be lusting after hunting and fishing gear. We lived in an area with lots of woods and fields. Henry loved it and would be outside all the time. He was a Cub Scout, a Boy Scout, and an Explorer Scout, and he had leadership roles in all of those. At family gatherings, Henry was never reserved. He would share the things he learned or had opinions about with anyone who would listen. Our grands, our aunts, our uncles always expressed interest in us. He also absorbed the dynamics of those people in those gatherings. Henry's personality, his calmness, his likability, his demeanor were all developed from watching those people. As an adult, Henry had a knack for talking with people like they were his best friend. Now, Henry was tall, and in our extended family, there was no one taller. As a matter of fact, I'm considered tall in our family. So there was always the question, where did the height come from? So Dad knew exactly. He would say that when Henry was bad, he would kick him in the seat of the pants. And when Elaine and I were bad, he would hit us on the top of the head. Now, Henry stopped getting taller because Dad's foot could no longer reach the seat of his pants. Henry went on to high school, graduating from Somersworth High School in 1965. He was smart, active in clubs, and I believe he was also in the National Honor Society. When he graduated, he was awarded a $100 scholarship from the French Club. In 1965, that was a lot of money, so it meant a lot. Growing up, Henry worked hard. He delivered newspapers, he shoveled snow, he cut grass, he babysat, he even caddied, among other things. It was the only way there was money for us to do things. Henry went on to the University of New Hampshire. He studied forestry, and between his first and second year, he went to Montana to fight fires. I think after that, he always knew he would go west. During his second year, Henry thought he needed a break. So he dropped his classes, only sharing that with our parents well after the fact. Henry worked as a cook at the Student Union building full-time for a while. During that time, he met a young co-ed, excuse me, named Pam Penick. And I believe she was waitressing at the Union as well to earn some money. They dated a while, and Henry had the courage to bring her home to meet the family. Our parents loved her instantly. I was a bit confused. Someone actually would date my brother. Sometime over the next year or so, they came home again and announced they were engaged. Again, I was confused. During Henry's sabbatical, his school sabbatical, he enlisted in the Navy Reserves and served 2 years of active duty on a submarine as a cook. Or as his captain would tell the other captains, he had the only French chef in the fleet. Henry and Pam were married on December 28, 1968, and by that time I became less confused and understood how much they loved each other. Henry asked me to be his best man, and it was an honor. After his Navy commitment, Henry went back to UNH, and his commitment to studying and working hard to help support his family never wavered. Pam worked hard to make sure Henry could focus on what he needed to do. Jeremy was born while Henry and Pam lived in New Hampshire. Henry graduated in '73 and headed west to attend the University of Arizona. Julie came along not long after that. So that's the start of it. As I said earlier, you all know him better than I as an adult in my mind. So I'll end with this one final thought. There's a golf course where I live that I like to frequent. It's just a small course. There's a granite bench there that's dedicated to somebody who had passed away. And carved on that bench is the quote, "I have but one friend, and he is every man." I think of Henry that way. He loved and was friend with so many people. Henry, we love you, and we will always miss you.
Now let's hear from those kids who had the most to complain about because they had to grow up with him. So come on up and share with us.
No. Okay, I'm not really used to microphones, so hopefully this goes a little better than I might think. So anyway, thank you all for coming. I'm Jeremy. Henry's my dad. My dad, Henri Bisson, may not be the man that you thought he was. I can never forget the time that he and I were fishing alone in Alaska at a spot I probably should not disclose to you. And the reason is because at this particular spot, I caught a very large fish, the biggest coho salmon that I ever caught. And we hit, because we found this, let's see. Oh, the reason is because, excuse me, this is very difficult for me. The reason is because we found a particular eddy where I caught a very large fish, and it was my biggest coho salmon ever. And I was compelled to keep that certain location secret. However, I don't have to worry about this because you see, my dad probably already told you where it was. It infuriated me that my dad would go and tell complete strangers about what we caught, where we caught it, and what we used to catch it. While knowing that we were planning to go back the very next day. This trauma played out numerous times in my life, and I never understood what compelled him to undermine our future fishing efforts in this manner. So sure, if I see a nice person struggling along I will share some information as long as I believe it won't affect my own livelihood. But when I see strangers I've never met, they will get no information from me other than I think they already have, such as, isn't this a beautiful day? Before now, I may have thought he did this because he liked attention. Maybe he enjoyed being seen as highly knowledgeable and skilled, but I don't think that's true. Some of you were likely more astute than me about this, and also maybe I was blinded by my own self-interest. But what I now think is that my dad was sometimes simply more generous than his own good. And he took such great pleasure in providing the means to happiness to others. In a way, it was his true persona. So I understand him better now as I think about all the times in my childhood when I was unhappy and how it affected him. He was always there giving help or advice to make me feel better. His life revolved around making life fair and better for everyone around him. He was a great facilitator because of his drive to satisfy. And realizing this now, it brings me joy to have been a part of his life and a major recipient of his generosity. But it also brings sadness knowing I can no longer have an opportunity to reciprocate my help for him. He did not like to get help from others, but when he did, he sure expressed his gratitude. So now here we are, left without my dad, without his advice, without his leadership. But I say no, we are not alone and we are not without him. He is still with us. He is with us forever in all the ways his existence touched our lives. He's not just a man. He is not just the man we thought he was. He is more, because he lives on in us. I know now his lessons to me will help me be more grateful and be more loving. It will help me, I can't even see now. It will help me care more for others, no matter how they act towards me. I know now that because of my dad, I can be better and that the world is better. So as the best thank you I can give to my dad, I will take it upon myself to reflect on what I've learned from him to be better and less selfish, to be more generous and less judgmental. Through actions like this, my dad will live on. If you also feel compelled, you may do so as well, and together he will live on in us. Thank you, Dad. You are my best friend.
I'm on it, got it.
Bear with me, I cried so much that now my nostrils are closed up. Can't breathe. My father was from New Hampshire, and so was the poet Robert Frost. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch the woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep, excuse me, of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep.
Perfect. Thank you. One last speaker here, and you're kind of speaking Pam's words, aren't you, Carrie?
I am Pam and Henry's daughter-in-law. I'm married to their son, Jeremy. And Pam has done me the great honor of asking me to share her words. So I'm going to try to get through Pam's words. You have heard the wonderful words people have said about Henri. I'm proud that everyone speaks so highly of him. However, I would like to say a few words about what Henri's love and companionship has meant to me. We met more than 56 years ago when I was bussing tables and he was frying burgers on the grill at the University of New Hampshire Memorial Union Building. Many of you may not realize I'm a very serious person. And from the start, I think Henri made it his project to make me laugh. And boy, did we laugh together over those 56 years. Over the last month of the last year, when he seemed to be slowing down, we would hold hands watching Big Bang Theory and other old sitcoms on TV, and we'd laugh out loud. I treasure those moments so much. We had many adventures together, both in all the places we have lived and in the foreign travel we have delighted in after he retired from the BLM. One of the activities I like to do was snorkeling, and I'm sure Henri didn't enjoy it as much as I did, as I am super buoyant and he was not. I think he was concerned that I would just float away from him on the current, as he was always yelling that I was drifting away. However, he always made sure that we got some snorkeling in on our cruises. Henri delighted in my weaving friends and looked forward to Gem Show every year when we would get together at our house. He would cook for everyone, but every year he would have to ask who didn't eat meat, who didn't eat cheese, and who couldn't eat gluten. I think he viewed it as a challenge to feed my friends. From the start, Henri and I enjoy the outdoors together. From the first hike up Mount Chocorua in New Hampshire, when he kept telling me the summit was just over the next ridge, a catchphrase through all of our hiking endeavors. Our last such adventure together was this past September when he acted as our technical support at the Grand Canyon. Henri was the love of my life, and I will miss him forever. Thank you, Pam, for letting me share those words. And these are just a couple of my words. Pam and Henri, I love you forever.
Henri Bisson had two great loves. The one is this crazy woman in the front row, who, from that moment that he saw her, I think he loved her, because who couldn't? And those climbs up the mountains. And I got to tell you that she told me that Henri really loved their honeymoon, that she didn't get to go on that 3-month cruise. His other great love were these things I'm hiding from you because of these screens, those wild spaces out there that were so dear to his heart. I sometimes at memorial services read a little quote by Forrest Gump. You remember when he was there at the house, the old house where Ginny had lived, his girlfriend, and she's picking up rock after rock and throwing at the house. And at the end, he says, sometimes there's just not enough rocks. And that's true at a moment like this, isn't it? But with Henri, it's true in a whole different way. I think he could have visited rocks his whole life. Rocks and the plants, the animals, what grew in those spaces, not just the physical things, but the spirit that lived in those kinds of spaces. He loved that. He lived out the truth that is in your bulletin, that poem by Rabindranath Tagore so well, didn't he? The one who plants trees knowing he or she will never sit in their shade has at least started to understand the meaning of life. He knew the power of trees. He knew the power of wild spaces. He knew why we needed them, and he dedicated his life to giving that to us. He sat in that triangle of people who wanted to enjoy nature, people who wanted to take the resources there from her, and the need to give space for nature to have its own space. He sat in that area so well, balanced between those different interests, and allowed each to have a voice and a space to live. It's kind of what he calls us to, isn't it? Both individually and collectively, to continue to do all of that work. I have a poem that I just love. It's just called Be. And we have to decide where in this poem we reside. It says, be the still pool, let your face reflect the wonder. Be the bud, prepare to blossom. Be the tree, grant shelter. Be the butterfly, accept the riches of the moment. Be the moth, seek the light. Be the lantern, guide the lost. Be the path, open the way for another, turn storms into songs. Be the rain, wash away, cleanse, forgive. Be the bridge, reach in peace to the other side. Be the moss, temper your strength with softness and mercy. Be the soil, bear fruit. Be the gardener, create order. Be the temple, let the Spirit dwell in you. Be the seasons, welcome change. Be the leaf, fall gracefully when your time comes to let go. I think he lived all those, didn't he? Lived them again and again, each in its time, each in its purpose. As I said, I only was privileged to meet Henri on the occasional moment as he came to some event that was here at St. Francis. I visited the home one time. And I'm pretty sure that the times he came here, he wasn't here because of me. I think he was here because he loved someone so much that he would go do what she loved. And he proved that throughout his life, didn't he? That who you are together, the two of you, was so important to him. Much of how Henri ordered his life was to bring joy to Pam. And I'm so thankful for how he did that. Anita Diamant once said that of all life's pleasure, only love owes no debt to death. He loved well. And I know right now you're sitting in a space where it feels like that love has been taken from you. That love feels distant, but it's not true. I just want you to know that, even though it feels like that, just believe me in this. In Romans, there's a scripture that often gets read that I love. And it talks about God and says, what will separate us from the love of God? But I think it works just as well if you insert Henri's name there. What will separate us from the love of Henri? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? No, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through the one who loved us. Henri is here and present with us. And I know you want to put your arms around him and hold him one last time. Have his hands in your hands. But believe me, you'll still feel those hands. You'll still feel those arms. You will especially still feel that heart. He will be present with you because he would never leave you alone. He's here with you and he will be here with you. Jewel from Alaska, where Henri loved to go, was a singer who sang a song called The Shape of You. And it talks about how I carry a hole in my heart in the shape of you. Henri left a great hole, wonderful hole for all of us, a space that lives on in us and gives us strength to be able to be more than what we could be, gives us vision that we wouldn't have without him. Hold on to that and know that right now, where it feels like a wound, it will become such a joy for you to know he's still there. Where right now it feels like such a loss, just know that you'll find that he is there, present and with you every single moment. Not just Pam, but every single one of you. Remember, Henri. I read a thing not long ago that I just loved. And it talks about how a great loss has occurred And everything is changed by this event. We are painfully aware that life can never be the same again, that yesterday is over, that relationships once rich have ended. And then it stops and pauses and says, but there is another way to look at this truth. If life now went on the same without the presence of the one who has died, we could only conclude that the life we here remember made no contribution. Henri made contribution. Not just all of those first things where we saw what he did in this wonderful wilderness land that we enjoy, but in small ways, like I live just a couple blocks from Udall Park, and he helped to make that space, a space that we can go and visit. But maybe most importantly, he made spaces in each one of us. The fact that this person left behind a place that cannot be filled is a high tribute to this individual. Life can be the same after a trinket is lost, but never after the loss of a treasure. Hold on to the amazing man that loved you so well, that will never leave you, and know that he is here with us all on those fishing trips, on those places where he had to mediate between whoever was not quite in agreement, in all those spaces where he advocated for everyone. Henri, we are so thankful for who you are, for how you live here, continue on with us. Amen. Arthur O. Roberts wrote a poem that I find interesting, and I'd like to read it as a ending prayer. And as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to have the family come on up and kind of stand here, let you guys greet them, and then go back, get that food, and start sharing stories. Will you please? He says, Lord, it may seem odd that I should pray here now, but when I plant trees, I have things to say to God. As these trees grow, I hope my great-grandchildren or someone's boys and girls play hide and seek among the towering trunks and chattering squirrels. I hope they hear beauty in the singing boughs and birds. I hope they breathe clean forest air and find your peace. When my hands press moist soil carefully about the roots, I feel your love and life. I feel a world reborn. Oh God, heal the scars of earth with trees and not with snags and thorns. Thank you, Henri, for making this world the world it was meant to be. Amen. And all the rest of you, if you want to, can come on up to come and enjoy this family and give them your love. All of you there at home, I'm going to take you in the back room. I'm going to pull this out of here, though.
Some of these names his. He worked at the BLM in DC. Some of them logged off because I think there were 24.
If you're not talking, if you could mute yourselves, that would be great.
All right, can you hear me on this device? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm going to mute this, but what I want you to do is just one by one, share your story.
Okay, I'll start. I'm Henry's cousin, Deb. I'm a younger cousin, and of course, Henry and Pam know me since I've been a baby, and they babysat me. And Henry was my big brother, and he was a kind, gentle man. And when I needed an older brother around and an older sister, Pam and Henry were there. And my heart goes out to them, and I'm sorry I can't be with you. I'm too far away right now. But you know, I love you. And you know, I'm here for you, for all of you. And what a dear man, and what a great loss. And I have happy memories of Henry playing poker with all the aunts and the grandparents, and jumping on the beds with cousins and all those fun things. We had such a special family in that we had numerous, as Ron mentioned, first cousins, and we still are like brothers and sisters, and it's wonderful. So Pam, I'm here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. God bless you all.
Hello, my name is Johanna Munson. I'm here in Boise with Pam Johansson. And I just wanted to say that Henry meant the world to me. I met him in Alaska, and he changed my life professionally. And I just want to, he gave me the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. as a part of my job, and took me out of Alaska back to the lower 48. And I owe him the world. And I wish my best to Jeremy and Pam and Jules. Thank you.
Made $2,800, almost $2,900 this month. Finish watching this movie, you won't like it.
Is quite right. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Ditton. Henry was a very special friend and a great mentor for me. I worked with him at the BLM for many years, worked with him up in Alaska, worked with him when he was in DC. Known him for a long time, worked with Jeremy here in Boise, Idaho. And just want to express my condolences to the family, to Pam and to Jules and to Henry and to the grandkids, and let everybody know that he will be greatly missed. He is a tremendous man.
Thank you very much. Who else?
Hi, Jim. This is Mary Jo Redwell. I'm the president of the Public Lands Foundation currently. And Henry was extremely helpful to me. He had volunteered to lead a development committee to try to raise funds for the organization, and was doing such tremendous work for us, and would call me about every week to give me new ideas about things we should be doing. And I really appreciated that advice, appreciated him. Interestingly, while I worked for the BLM for over 36 years, I never had a chance to work with him directly as a federal employee, but I got to know him afterward, and he was instrumental in the success of the Public Lands Foundation. We are going to miss him. I just don't know how you fill that void. And so we greatly appreciate everything he did. And we give our absolute sympathy to the family, because we know how much we're going to miss him, but it doesn't compare to how much they're going to miss him. So we greatly appreciate everything he did. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Who else?
Yeah, hi, this is David Bisson, Henry's uncle from Florida. I've known him all his life, but of significance is the fact that we're now in Fort Pierce, Florida, because tomorrow we're going to be attending a baptism for a great-grandson whose name is Henri Bisson. He was born 2 months ago on December 23rd, and he's got Henry's name, so his name will continue.
Thank you for sharing that. Who else?
Hi, my name is John Shepard. I'm a senior advisor at the Sonoran Institute, and I've known Henry for over 20 years, going all the way back to when he worked with us for the creation of the Las Ciénegas National Conservation Area, which was formerly known as the Empire Ranch, the property that Henry helped acquire for the BLM. I'd like to share two stories. One, about 12 years ago, I threw my hat in to be the executive director at the Sonoran Institute. And as you can imagine, as an internal candidate, it can be kind of complicated, and it's always an emotionally fraught kind of process. And Henry was my point person from the board, who kind of guided me through that entire process. And I didn't get the job, but I certainly didn't want to leave the organization, but in large part because of the way Henry treated me through that whole process and helped me sort of deal with the disappointment of not becoming the executive director. He still made me feel very valued as a leader and employee at Sonoran Institute, and I'm deeply thankful for him in that respect. The other is, I've always known Henry has such an incredible depth and breadth of knowledge of our public lands. And I got to do a road trip with him and a colleague of mine, Ian Dowdy. We drove the highway from Tucson all the way up to Kingman as part of a kind of a field assessment to see whether we wanted to support a proposed interstate highway along much of the road leading up between those two cities. And we must have stopped every 3 or 4 miles because Henry knew something. Oh, let's get out here. Let's just walk down this trail, or just let's just get off this dirt road and drive up there. And he was just a fountain of information and was so helpful in guiding us, in that case, in our public comments there. Just a great friend and a wonderful mentor, and I miss him dearly. So thank you for allowing me to share some thoughts.
Thank you for sharing a dusty road master with us. Who else?
Well, I have a little story that is pretty amazing. I was in Puerto Rico 5 years ago when Maria came through Puerto Rico, and that's where I am now. And I called Henry to say to him, hey, there's a big hurricane coming here, and just wanted to let you know. And I didn't know if I was going to live through that or not. Just wanted to touch bases with him. He contacted somebody at the BLM, and the next day I had federal agents calling my name while I was sitting out on the beach, playing musical instruments with some of the locals, because that's the way we coped with music the next day after being devastated by Maria. And he sent in, he put me on a list of evacuees, and that's what a big brother does. And that was an amazing story, and I have fun telling it to people. And I'll always tell it to people because of his generosity and his love for his family.
What a great story to share. Thank you. Who else? Thank you so much for being here today, for sharing your stories, and most importantly, for sharing Henry and for loving him. Bye-bye now.